Okay, it is 6:45 p.m. and this is a public hearing, and we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is August 31st, 2023.
Good evening. We're going to go over the proposed budget for the 22-24 year. This was sent out on Tuesday, and we're going to start with our enrollment trends. And you can see the enrollment has bounced up around a little bit, but we've got this decline here from the COVID years. And then you'll see the bump of what we're projecting, hopefully ADA this year. We've already seen an indication of the increase. Our ADA percentage, daily percentages are higher so far this year than they were last year. So that's what we're using to project our revenue for next year. But you can see our peak was in the 18-19 year as far as our enrollment. Tax rates.
Yes, sir. Quick question, Philip. I know you got ADA and Snapshot. Maybe that's just what is the weighted average? Because that seems to be higher.
That's the way they like all our special ed students. They carry a higher weight. Our career technology students carry a higher weight.
Leo, the state recognizes that with some children, it costs some more to educate them, so they account for that.
They're weighted at a higher.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
And you can see our trends in our certified property values. You can see we did have a pretty significant jump this year. It's 26% for M&O and 22% for the INS. But that's what when we conveyed to you our certified values that we got on July 25th. And you'll see we've got that perpetual gap. The gap between the two is the value of the Cedar Polymers plant that has a 313 agreement. So that's why our INS is always higher than our M&O, except for the $30 million. For the 313 agreement, they pay on $30 million on the M&O. They do 100% on the INS. So that shows that big spike that we had in certified values this year. And then if you look at our tax rates, here's what our historical, here's our historical, here's our data. This is what we publish in the paper. This shows you what the tax rate was last year, 22-23, what we're proposing for, and I didn't change the date up there. That's supposed to be 23-24.
We cut.
But this is all due to the state compression. The state determines what our M&O tax rate is because values across the state went up, and because our values went up 26%, we're at what we call the floor. We're at the lowest that we can be, which is the 0.6192. That's the floor. And then because we had the TRE back in 2011, we could add our pennies back. So we get to add our 8 pennies of golden pennies, and then our copper pennies. They've been compressed to almost 6 cents. We get to add that approximately 13 cents back to the floor, bringing us up to our M&O tax rate for this year is the 0.7575, which is what the state pretty much, because of compression and the rules of how they set the tax rates, that's what our tax rate is. And then our proposed INS rate is going to be almost 17 cents, 16.77. So our total tax rate going from $1.1584 down to just 0.9252, approximately 23 cents. Historical tax rates, I'm not sure why this isn't displayed, but this is the biggest year of compression, the 24 cents, but we've never had a decrease of this much. We've had smaller compressions. Last year we had a little bit of compression. The year before we didn't have compression because our values actually dipped a little bit 2 years ago. Like I said, once again, I'm not sure why this isn't showing. Our INS rate for the past 10 years, the printout, I mean, if you're looking online, you can see what was when I sent the deck to y'all. But here's the total tax rate. That's what it's showing. And it is showing our biggest drop here in this last year, do the compression. But this is the INS rate and the M&O rate combined. And you see we're significantly lower than we were 10 years ago due to compression. Here's what's in the paper. Here's the effect, average market value residents. This is we get this from the appraisal district. And you can see pretty significant decrease in the taxable value due to the additional homestead exemption, dropping from 108,000 down to 72,000 on the average residence. So you can see the compression is on the average home here, it's lowering the tax bill almost $600. And this is what was in the public notice that we published in the paper. The general fund. Okay, now I'm just gonna go through basically what I've gone through before. We're just gonna go through the revenues first, and then we're gonna go through the expenditures and the changes from the base budget from last year to build up to the proposed 23-24 budget. Obviously, like we said, the tax rate is pretty much calculated by TEA. That's determined by them because of our increase in our values and the increase across the state. The estimated current certified tax values, that also factors in, but I'm using estimates because I won't get the actual certified. The comptroller takes a few months to certify what the appraisal districts send them in July. It takes the comptroller a few months to actually take that data and make sure, that's basically they're auditing the appraisal districts to make sure that each appraisal district is adequately assigning tax values correctly. So we'll get those in September. That could have an effect on our funding, but I use what I had to do the last 3 years. I just have to kind of look at the trend, because the comptroller values are always different from what the certified values from the appraisal district are. So I just kind of do a trend analysis and say, normally the gap has been this much, so I'm estimating what the certified values are going to be from the comptroller. Estimated ADA. I took last year's snapshot enrollment, which is in October. We are right on target. Our enrollment right this year, I think as of today or yesterday, we were two higher enrolled than we were same number of days last year. And so I took snapshot enrollment from last year and took going with an attendance rate of 0.945. Last year we were in like the 92s. We've been averaging well above that now. We even hit a couple of days at 95, above 95. So that's what I use to estimate the ADA, which is the biggest factor in determining what our revenue is. Remember, it's basically $10,200 per ADA. Whatever happens, that's what we get. Estimated collection rate, I'm back up to the 98%. We've reached the agreement with Flint Hills. It looks like we're going to have normal collection rates, but like I've said many times, on the M&O side, it's not as devastating because whatever tax revenue doesn't make up, the state will make up the difference to guarantee us that we get our $10,200 per student.
I have a quick question. You
Yes.
said you made an agreement with Flint Hills. Is that for 18 to 22 or is that 23?
No, they kind of decided on for 23 what they're going to pay for 23, so we're back in kind of normal. They're not going to pay 100% of what their certified values, but it's not anywhere near the 75% that they were paying before. So I think the collection rates are going to be back to normal. That's why I'm back to using 98%. But once again, on the M&O side, it really won't have an effect because if our tax revenues drop, the state will make up the difference to make sure we get our $10,000, $2,000 per student per ADA. It will affect us on the INS side, but thankfully, because of the Flint Hills payment, we have a really healthy INS fund balance, and you'll see that slide later. So even if I'm still using the 98% on the INS side, but I think we've got enough cushion that even if our revenues fall a little short, we'll still have plenty of fund balance to cover our bond payments. If you look at, and then local revenues, that'll be on like the very first page of the red handout, rig handout. Property taxes from the last year's base budget, overall, they're going down about $231,000 using the criteria that I said, the collection rate, and the certified values that we have come up with that. It's a little bit less than the base budget last year. Investment earnings, got a big increase in there because the pools are paying almost 5.5%. And so I'm bumping that up. Hopefully that's how much interest we'll earn next year. And then a little slight decrease in the chapter 313, we get $100 per ADA. Obviously, our ADA has been dropping a little bit, so that budget was a little bit higher, so I decreased that to come up with that difference to get a more estimate of what we're gonna get for the $100 per ADA payment, because they based that on our October snapshot enrollment. Here's the big decrease, foundation school fund, available school fund, it's going down about $1.3 million, but that's because I'm using that lower estimate of ADA. So from last year's budget, base budget, it's going down because we're anticipating the lower ADA than what we budgeted last year. And then to come up with that bottom line of $10,200 per student, the Chapter 49 recapture is going to go up a little over $500,000 to a little over $1 million, based upon what the base budget was last year. And then federal revenues, I'm fully booking the money we get from MAC and SHARS, which is the ability we get to bill for services that we provide to our Medicaid eligible students. Increasing that a little over $200,000, and then the indirect cost income that we're getting from the ESSER fund. Since the ESSER funds majority of them have already been spent, the ESSER funds in the 23-24 is the last year for the ESSER funds. So we're not spending as much, so the indirect cost that we get to report back to the general fund goes down.
Philip, quick question. Is there a balance on the ESSER funds, or is that down to zero?
No, it's not. We're paying, right now, we're paying 5 positions out of the ESSER funds through this next year, and then that fund will be fully spent. And we have until, I guess, I'm not sure, September maybe of 24 to finish spending that money. It was a 3-year span grant.
And what happens to those 5 positions?
That's something that'll have to be addressed in the 24-25 budget.
None of them are classroom teachers.
Yeah. And then just going through the major expenditure changes from last year's base budget to this year, because of per capita adjustments, we give the campuses their local money based upon their per capita. Every campus was lower per capita except the intermediate, and that grand total was a little under 50,000. And then was increase in the gifted and talented program, because the way we're doing the program changes that we're doing to the GT program, we had to increase that budget a little bit to handle those. And then career and tech and CCMR combined, it's one up being a little bit under 15,000, and most of that is to cover Warpath Academy expenses. We are paying a lot of Warpath out of instructional materials allotment, but we do have some costs in the general fund, like maybe some other textbooks or some of the tuition that we do have to pay. So we're increasing between career and tech and CCMR combined, it's going up a little bit. And then special education's going up a little bit. We did some reallocations, but that's mainly to cover their legal costs. And then state comp, that's going up a little bit because we're trying, as the ESSER went away, we were using ESSER funds for some of our, what we call, we don't really call it summer school, but our summer remediation, what we do in June during our short break between school years. We were using ESSER funds, but now we're down to just those 5 positions, so we got to bring some of those costs back to the general fund. And so it's because of the reduced ESSER 3 funds, and then we'll call it learning loss. It's our after-school tutorials, it's our remediation, and like I said, it's whatever we do in June to help kids either remediation or catch back up. What you call we don't call it, it's not really the traditional summer school, but it's in effect summer school. Emergent bilingual, it's going up a little bit, and that's to cover our dual language, some costs associated with our dual language program. Then DAP is going up for the property lease that we're doing for the Westwood Center, where we're preparing to move our DAP program to. And then...
Excuse me, when do we start paying on that?
July?
We had to start paying on the lease in July. We're doing some, we're having to do some modifications and things to make it compliant for having a classroom setting over there. I've talked about this one a lot, the increase in the insurance. I'm projecting another 15% increase. But remember, this is such a big hit because I'm also catching up from last year. I predicted, or I was estimating, I think, a 15% increase, and it wound up being over 36%. So this is really catching up for 2 years. I'm catching up for what I underestimated the year before and what it's going to go up this next year. And remember, our property insurance, 6 months of it renews on March the 1st. So when the rates go up, 6 months of the higher bill, I know what 6 months of next year's bill are. I just don't know what through March through August is going to be when we renew. But like we did say, we're exploring other options. We're going to look at other vendors and other possibilities to see if there's another way that we can at least get the same protection, but maybe with a little cheaper premium.
Great idea.
Good move.
Utilities, you're going to hear some other ideas that we're going to come up with to save energy, and so I've trimmed looking at how this last year settled. I decreased the utility budget, $86,000, program estimates with our energy savings plan. So I've reduced that. Yes.
Speaking of utilities, and I know y'all are going to talk about that later because it's in our board book, but when we do contracts with other schools to come over and use our facilities, are we putting AC and stuff like that in there? Like how detailed are we getting with our contracts?
I know some of the things that we do, we charge a facility fee. Maybe we might not be charging enough.
Well, I can tell you we're not charging enough. To be good neighbors, we let Arlington Heights use our intermediate gym for $50 an hour. That doesn't cover, but we're in the kid business, and I felt it was being a good neighbor and allowing those kids to have use of our facilities for that.
But we offer a whole lot of other times that other districts are coming in and using our facilities for playoffs and stuff like that.
Yes, and there will be a charge for that. For example, if there's a playoff football game, it'll be $12,000 to $15,000 to use the facility for that, and we'll get games.
The debt service, it went down because last year we paid off the maintenance tax note that we had for the energy savings plan from 15 years ago. We made the last payment on that. So we still have the 2 maintenance tax notes that we make payments out of the general fund. But overall, for next year, it'll go down by the one we paid off last year. And then security services, I'm upping that to be more in line with what we did this year and what we're trying to do. Adding a guard at ACC, which we didn't have before, and maintaining the presence that we have at our 4 big campuses.
And we get $10 a kid from the state for security.
Do we still have a security company, or are we just with PD now?
I think I left in the budget for maybe 1 security guard, because I think since we got the 1 fence, we don't need someone at the 1 door, is that correct?
That's correct, by the
'Cause
natatorium.
we put the fence around
Still have
the,
one officer, one.
so we have 1 with the student entrance or for the parking lot, right? So we have 1 security guard, and then we have the police officers. And this really is just to get us in line if we do the exact same thing this year that we did last year. PEEMS, there's a slight increase. Our contracted services for PEEMS went up a little bit, so we had to increase the PEEMS budget. And also the fee that we have to pay to the service center to submit our data went up a little bit too. Transportation is going up a little bit. We did do some arrangement, but that's mainly due because fuel costs are going to go up. I'm anticipating fuel costs because of what's happened this year. I had to put a little bit more in there to cover fuel for next year. And then overall department cuts, this is a combination. If you look on the sheet, like Janie, that you're looking at that one, if you look, this is a combination of all the other departments, not the student, not the educational programs, not payroll. This is just all the other departments, my department, y'all's budget, the human resources, all the other departments. And mainly it's reducing travel, capital outlay, local function, and supplies. And then this is a combination of on the last page of the budget handout, This is pretty much everything netted together, salary, stipends, everything. That's the total increase from last year's base budget. Now, what this includes is, this includes a 2.5% increase for the teachers on the teacher salary scale, and then a 1% increase for everyone else, for all the certified support, admin, clerical paras, and the maintenance and transportation. And then, like I said, the average teacher raise with the step is 2.5%. That's what is included in that number. That includes, certification tested subject stipends. That was the biggest increase back in March. We'd approved to increase those from $1,200 to $2,000. Because before, the only tested subject that was $2,000 was math. We raised all the other ones to the same level. And then, like I said, all the other staff is 1% of midpoint of their pay range. Substitutes, increased that. First 6 weeks of school, looks like our sub costs are not showing any signs of lessening, although we've got some plans for that. We've got some things in the works, and we're working with the campuses to work on controlling that cost. But I'm seeing continued absence trends. And this is really just to hopefully cover, if we have a mirror of what the last year was, this is to cover if the next year is going to be similar to what last year was.
I have a question, Phil,
Yes.
on the education foundation, we're still budgeting 27,000. At
Yes.
what point does that become a self-entity itself? I mean,
really-
they've had two years of good,
Soon.
that's great news.
Overtime, the overtime budget this year was pretty on par, but we're going to take some steps to hopefully reduce that. in the next
Going
year.
back to the Ed Foundation, there were cuts in that budget.
Yeah, $6,000 cut.
Pretty much all I left in there was the contracted services for the part-time.
But I
person.
agree with you.
I do too.
And then along with the pay raises is also payroll benefits. That affects, the overall raises affects that number, but also the number, my TRS number from last year, I didn't budget enough for TRS, so I've got to catch that up and include that. And then we also had increased participation in the insurance plan, so the contributions actually went up more than what I had budgeted because we had more people, which is a good thing, more people taking the TRS insurance. And next year, I've appropriately budgeted for this year. I think I even had maybe the participation going up slightly. That's what I budgeted for next year.
Who handles the health insurance, Philip?
Well, it's the TRS plan, and so our benefits office, we have open enrollment. You have to join at the beginning of the year, and then you can only get out of it or start it if you have a qualifying event. If you have another kid, or you get divorced, or you have a family situation, your spouse gets better insurance, so you drop your insurance because your spouse got better insurance. But we have our benefits person handles when people sign up in the open enrollment period at the beginning of the year, and then handles all the changes that happen during the year. So in summary, this is just a summary of the general fund that shows you our three divisions of revenue: local, state, and federal. And then I've kind of broken down the expenditures into campus programs, department programs, and payroll benefits, which that pretty much aligns with the red sheet, how I divide the expenditures. So with the raises that I was saying that are calculated in here, and the revenues based upon the criteria that I said, we're looking at a $2.7 million deficit.
Now, you have on here 22-23, but this is 23-24, right?
Yeah, I apologize, that's another date I missed, but this is the new year.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
And then, if we spend every dime, if we do everything, which I don't anticipate, this is the budget, it's an estimate. Despite the items that I keep harping about, I call them the big four: subs, insurance, security, legal. Despite those big animals that sometimes seem out of control. If we spend every dime, at the end of next year, our estimated fund balance will be about $11 million, which that's right at our 3-month. There's no requirement for a minimum fund balance, but that's really a good number that you want to stay above. You want to stay at the 3 months of operating expenses.
So Philip, that's where it's supposed to be, but our current fund balance is 12,100,000, or just under 12,200,000, right?
Actually, it's up, because of the Flint Hills settlement, I had $2 million that was kind of set aside in case we had to write a refund check to Flint Hills. And so, since we don't, our unencumbered, totally available fund balance, just add $2 million to that number.
Okay.
So it's $14 million.
Okay. Because that's not what you had on the other page.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Philip, let me ask you something. So today, correct me if I'm wrong, is the end of the fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
All right, so as of tomorrow, we're operating in a deficit.
Well, tonight, we're going to ask you to adopt a deficit budget. So yes, I guess starting tomorrow begins the first day of the fiscal year that we are projecting to spend more money than we expect to take in. That's correct. It's the first day of.
If we don't make changes during the year, that's the case.
But starting tomorrow, which is the first day of the new year,
The new fiscal year.
we're operating in a deficit. In lay terms, are we starting the new year, the new fiscal year in a deficit?
Correct.
Okay.
We're starting the new year with a budget that anticipates more expenditures than revenue.
Clear.
Till next August 31st.
Clear, thank you.
Yes.
I have one question. You said 11 million is like the 3-month operating.
Yeah.
This year that just passed, we were closer to 4 million then on the monthly operating
Well,
cost?
the expenditures were, I think, 53
Well,
million.
the thing is.
Or 53 million,
It is, well, when you look at this year is a little, I'm not gonna say distorted, but because of the athletic field and the other things, those were one-time things. Those aren't regular operating, those were like one-time big expenses. So those are not like if you take our last year's expenditures and divide it by 12, yeah, you're gonna get a much higher number. But the football field, the athletic.
The 5.5 million, you take that off.
You take that off, that's not a regular operating, that's just coming out of fund balance, that's not an operating expense. That's not day-to-day salaries, utilities, it's not.
And do we have it in the operations section just because it came out of the general fund or what? On the 53 total?
When you say operations, like, it's not in that figure right there because it came out of that amendment happened last year, and that's coming out of fund balance during that year. It's not in this budget because we already we did the amendment last year for it. Now, you will see, we still owe about $700,000 on that contract, and that as of today, the last day of the fiscal year, we still owe has about $700,000. That PO is going to roll over, and I come to y'all in October with the budget amendment. I'm not sure if there's going to be any other items that when I say roll over. We only roll over, because the rule of the general fund is you spend it or you lose it. You have a year to spend it, and if you didn't spend it, it goes back into our savings account. So, but if we have if we have a big project like the athletic improvements, or if we have any other kind of project, in the past it's been technology projects, like maybe an E-rate project that it's funded and it's budgeted, but it doesn't get finished by the end of the year. There's still money owed on that PO. If it's a major project, if it's a major function, if it's something, if a school ordered a computer for $1,200 and it didn't come in time, well, the money goes back into the fund balance, and if they want to buy that computer, they're going to have to do another PO out of their new budget. I'm not going to roll $1,200 over. But if it's a major project, I come to y'all in October and say, hey, these POs or big projects or major things that are going to continue to roll over. So I have to bring a budget amendment to you to say, because I can tell you right now, in October, I'm going to bring a budget amendment that says we still owe Hess $700,000 on their contract, so that PO is going to carry over. But as far as it's not in the operating budget, it's not in the budget that you're adopting tonight because we've already approved that. that expenditure.
So that's part of the 5.5 that was done
Right,
last year.
that was done last year, that's right. It's a timing difference. It's still here, we haven't finished the project, we still owe the vendor, we still owe money on the contract, but that is just gonna go into the next fiscal
Just
year.
the cash impact.
So you say that approximately 3 months of operating expense of $11 million will be left at the end of the year.
Technically, if we spend every dime that we said we're budgeted, but normally we don't spend every dime that we budget, and we've got some other, we're taking some other steps to reduce costs, to eliminate as much, or try chipping away at this deficit as much as we can during the year. And we have another presentation for that, but
So
this is
if-
like worst-case scenario.
If we had a hurricane come through right now and knock everything down, how much of that fund balance is going to have to be used for our facilities?
We would have I think our deductible is 1 million. So
Per campus.
we'd have to come up with our $1 million deductible per event, per name storm. So,
But is that per campus or
no, per name
one
storm.
for the whole district?
Okay,
Now, if we have 2 hurricanes, then technically it could be 2 million,
okay,
because it's by name storm.
okay.
Denise, did you have a question?
Yeah, your hand went up.
Oh, it did, yes. Yeah, you said a comment about trying to get out of this deficit. We normally spend not everything in our budget and are able to save. But last year, we closed out a budget at a deficit of 6.6 million in the general fund.
Yes,
This year, we're closing out at a deficit of 7.7. We did get the turf field, so it's really 2 million. But if Flint Hills didn't pay us, it's probably closer to 3 or 4.
correct.
And-
Remember,
and so-
the original shortage was 3.6, yes.
So 6.6 last year, 3.6 this year, and now we're gonna pass a negative $2.7 million budget. There's just, so okay, in the 2 years prior, they passed a balanced budget, and we ended up way on the negative, right? So, one, thank you for bringing something that's realistic, right? So we are operating in a deficit, like there's no hiding that, and we shouldn't try to pretend that we're not.
No, absolutely not.
But I'm also fearful of the amount of safety nets you used to have in your budgets that are no longer there for this one. So one of them being the investments. I believe last year you budgeted, we're only gonna get 100,000 in interest earnings. And we got $1 million.
Right.
Awesome, safety net. But this year in the budget, safety net's gone. Now we're projecting about 900,000.
That's right.
The last year, we had an attendance of, or the snapshot was 94%, but the actual average throughout the year was that lower 92. And this budget, again, taking away that safety net, putting us back at that 94 of the snapshot. And though we have early trends in the very first 6 weeks, it's a lot of hard work to maintain that, but it's also even more due diligence, accountability, focus, all the buzzwords to try to optimize our operating costs, because we cannot continue to operate
Absolutely.
at a
We've
deficit.
stated
We
before,
can't
this is
sustain.
not sustainable. We've mentioned that before. It's
So-
not sustainable.
So there were 5 positions that you said were being paid under the ESSER funds right now.
The parent
And we
liaison.
were $970,000 over on salaries and benefits this year. Without those 5 employees being in the budget right now.
Yeah, I think the number is closer to, I think if you look at my budget amendments.
I can't
think-
remember the
I think
exact
it's
number,
500,000,
but-
it's a large number, yes.
So I too, for sustainability, that
I will definitely, I think we've said it before, This year is our, I don't know what adjective to put on it, but this year obviously is the last year that this can happen. 24, 25, if other things don't change, the problem is we are staffed at pre-COVID levels, and we will have to make the adjustment. If we don't get back up to our pre-COVID enrollment, we will have to make the adjustments to staffing for the 24, 25 year.
So let me just add a few things. We're holding our own on accountability. Yes, we're going to lose a letter grade in a couple of campuses, but we're also going to have a middle school that's projected to go to an A. We had $500,000 worth of HQIM curriculum materials that we didn't know we were going to have. Now, the majority of that was paid out of categorical funding, but there were some 199 costs, and the amount that was used to pay out of categorical funding, we would have used some of that money to pay for things that we did out of 199. Knowing that the trend, what it is, we're doing everything we possibly can to use our safety net to a point where we can't, to protect the integrities of the academic programs at the campus and to continue to invest in our people, knowing that that's going to end if we don't see higher enrollment and higher ADA. Now, at every one of our campuses, every one of them except primary, we've seen double-digit increases in enrollment day to day from the, I don't know, the 30, what day in school are we, 34, 35? 34 to the 34. Primary is down, they were down 100 and something, now they're down 67. We're up 2% in ADA. The high school principal made a comment to me last week regarding my observation going to Laugh-A-Palooza. And I made a comment to him that was, I see 30, 35 kids participating in this event. And I would say, with the exception of maybe 2, they're not in band, they're not in athletics, they're not in cheer, they're not in Golden Brigade. This is their niche. And he made a comment to me that resonated with me. And he said, at TM, we try to have something for everybody.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a cost to that. And I totally agree with the trends. We can't continue doing that unless we make some adjustments and tighten our belt. But I think we do have a year to where we don't have to make those, for lack of a better word, draconian measures that would impact the campuses. We've already eliminated 6 positions that we're not going to refill. That doesn't impact the classroom, so that's a good thing. None of the FTEs, people that are paid out of ESSER are in the classroom as teacher of record. We may have to eliminate that, but we'll do what we have to do.
Well, let me just make a comment. Tomorrow is the end of the first grading cycle for TM. So do we anticipate after the intersession to have a higher enrollment? Do we anticipate that our enrollment is going to go up after this first grading cycle, after intersession? Is that something that we can project to
I would say
see?
no. I think the savings that are in this budget is energy. I think Dr. White's going to give you a presentation of looking at the revenue advantages of going to optional flexible school day. There's some opportunities to capture funding when an at-risk student isn't at school that we're currently not taking advantage of. We're looking at piloting that for this year at ACC, and then possibly at high school. Mr. Alvarado has about 550 at-risk kids. If we follow the program, he's going to tell you that aside from generating the ADA when they are here, when they're not here, if we do what we need to do, we can get $1,500 per kid. Those are things that we haven't looked at, that we will. I think, you're going to hear me say in a little bit, that the three priorities that we just can't afford to fund is safety and security, high-quality instructional materials, and investing in teachers.
If we miss the mark on this budget again, and we fall below the 11 million, what does that do to our credit rating? And what does that do for, as we get new series of bonds, how much more interest would we have to pay?
I really don't know the answer as far as what it could affect on our credit rating. I mean, as long as we're paying our bills, as long as we're, in the black, I don't think we're gonna have a significant, Victor would probably be a better person to ask that question.
I even though there'll be in the next month or so a conversation that I'll have with one of the rating firms. Our rating primarily comes from the guarantee of the permanent school fund.
Correct, yeah.
And if I can just say something, to piggyback off the topic of the budgets and the deficits. Last week, I think this was from last week, you presented us with a year-end budget amendment summary. And the regular operating budget deficit was $2,038,000. I think we asked the question, where are we going to end up? Do you have a sense? And you said 1.6 million.
Right.
And this isn't being critical, but my point is, I understand you got a lot of moving parts.
Sure.
And we don't know. 2.7 might be realistic, but it could be short. So we have to think of that too.
I could tell you if something happens, if we have another COVID outbreak and ADA goes down, and that'll throw my numbers off. There's 100 things that could happen that will change what we're trying to fund here. You're right. There's a lot of things moving. But speaking of, we already started talking about this. Future budget challenges. There's the formula transition grant phase out next year. Right now, this is the last year of it, but hopefully the legislature will address that, because there are districts that have way more formula transition grant than we do, that are way bigger than us. So hopefully they will address that. I'm not counting on the special session, but there is a possibility. There is, what did you say? If you don't have hope, then you don't have a lot of stuff. But it could happen. I'm going to pretend that it's not, because I just don't think it is going to happen.
They want us to fail.
And then we do have to address, when the ESSER funds go away, we do have to figure out if we can sustain those 5 positions that are being funded in the last year of ESSER. We have to decide if there's some way we can make other cuts to absorb them back in, if we determine that they're critical and we need them, or pay them out of other category funds, or we just have to figure out what to do with those 5 positions. And then the big elephant in the room, obviously, sustainability. I don't want to harp on it, and I don't want you to think that it's the biggest problem that we have. And I know that. I live in every day. I think about it every day. But yes, this cannot be sustained. We're going to have to take some measures. We're going to have to do some other things to make sure that we can get back on track.
Well, let me ask you, realistically, are there places that we can bank on, so to speak, to make up for a deficit? realistically, what else can we cut back on? What else can we count on that we can say, you know, if we eliminate this, if we cut back on this, then that will increase our fund, our operating.
And we also have to consider some things that we normally don't like to say, but we might have to increase some class sizes. We might have to, look at that. It's and then over 70% of our budget, 75%, 76% of our budget is staff. So realistically, the only way, if our enrollment stays what it is, we cannot stay staffed for the 300 extra kids that we had before COVID. So we have to reduce our staff.
At this
And if
point-
that means, maybe some higher class sizes, that means,
I've got 5 classrooms that have 21 kids at primary. The vast majority are running 17, 18. The state allows you to run 22. You can get a waiver. A teacher that would leave, let's just pick out a date around Thanksgiving. I will have to consolidate rooms, and to me, that is a significant impact on our kids versus replacing that teacher. But you hire me to make those type of decisions, and unfortunately, they're going to have to be made.
there's some other things we can look at, especially at the secondary level with the scheduling. Pretty much everything's on the table. Yes, we have our goal, or we have our bullet points of, yes, the minimum impact on instruction. We've got the things we want to sustain, the things that we've got going. We want to maintain the highly qualified instructional materials. We want to keep going with our initiatives. But everything's on the table.
You'll see very little travel. We don't want to impact student travel.
No.
Because we want to continue for them to go to the museums and go, we're talking adult travel.
So on here, where is it for because I know we had to, in the general fund, we paid for the free lunch, so the meals.
Yeah, that's not on there. That's a one-time amendment for the
That
year
was
that
for
just
last year?
ended. That was for last year.
Okay.
That's not reoccurring because we did the CEP program this year. Because the problem last year was, it was too late for us to amend our application to say that all the kids could eat for free and the food service fund could pay for it. So
this year we're clear with that.
and remember, last year, the only campus that was officially CEP was the
primary,
primary.
yes.
So that's a one-time thing. This year, all campuses are on CEP.
Okay.
We're at 85%, so that means for every eligible meal that we serve, we get to claim federal reimbursement for 85% of them, and the food service fund balance has to pay for the other 15%.
But that comes out
And
of
you'll
the
see
food
that.
service.
Food service
I'm gonna go over the food service fund here in a bit.
Okay.
yeah. But that's the big difference. Now, the food service fund will cover everything, and we keep talking.
Well, it didn't do that last year, though.
No, because of the technicality of, it was too late to amend our application for our federal lunch program.
Okay.
So, we've got this
That's good.
great problem in the food service. The Texas Department of Agriculture is very angry at me because we have too much of a fund balance in the food service fund. And so we can sustain being on CEP at the 85% because we thankfully, we do have the fund balance in the food service fund to do that. And we're going to hit that real quick here.
We'll order some food trucks.
The other fund that you're going to be approving tonight is the debt service fund. Just a summary of it. Our total outstanding debt principal on the bonded debt, voter-approved debt that we have right now at the end of this fiscal year is basically a little under $41 million. Our scheduled principal interest payments are a little under $7 million for next year. That includes, so we can keep that rate at the same rate, and actually we're going up a little bit to the 1677. That includes, we've got on the table, we could potentially defease or retire an extra $1.7 million of that $41 million that's at the top there. And we'll do that. We'll wait and see what we are. Just like tonight, you're approving that resolution. So we'll have that option of doing that next August on the resolution that we're gonna ask you to approve tonight. And then just FYI, y'all approved the board approved the resolution last August, and we're defeasing about $225,000 of debt this month from the resolution that was approved last year. So we're continuing to pay off our debt sooner and get that debt off our books. The IRS will be increased to the $16.77. It's currently a little over 15 cents. So it's not even, it's like 1 point something cents. And then the estimated fund balance as of today in the debt service fund is $2.3 million. And like I said, I'm still using the collection rate estimate of 98%. Based upon what Flint Hills has said they're gonna pay for this year, it might drop a little bit, but it is not gonna have I've got the healthy fund balance, and it's not gonna be a significant impact on the debt service fund. And this is just a summary of the debt service. The property tax revenue that'll come in, local sources, this money is in its own investment account. It's gonna earn some more money next year. And we do get a little bit of money from the state for the voter-approved debt that we have. That's the $80,000. And there's our total estimated revenue in the debt service fund. There's our debt service payments. And then there's the expenditures, the net surplus, and then what our estimated fund balance is gonna be for next year. And food service, same thing. This is the food service budget. It's pretty much the same as last year, except for the payment that we had to make. But the local sources, we do some catering. We do have a la carte items that kids do pay for that are not part of the reimbursable lunch program. And then we do get a little bit of state money, but the majority of it is from our federal funds, the $2.5 million. And then we have our expenses, and we do have a projected deficit here because I've got to spend that fund balance down. We did some renovations to the kitchen. We bought new tables for the high school and the primary, I think, this year. And we're continuing to look at any kitchen equipment that needs to be replaced, any other things that need to be done to our coolers, our freezers, all that stuff, anything that food service needs. We have to spend the fund balance. We're required to spend the fund balance down. And that's why I'm asking y'all to adopt a deficit budget, because we need to spend the fund balance down. Because if you look, the estimated food service fund balance is a little over $2 million. So with the 3.5, according to TDA, we've got an excess fund balance of $1.3 million that we need to spend down.
Have the tables made it here yet?
December, that's the
Okay.
metal detectors.
And just real quick, when you see the things about adopting the tax rate, it's a little, I don't know what the right word is. It's a little quirky, I think. But the maximum, that MCR stands for maximum compressed rate. That's what the state calculates for us. That's what, because our values went up so much, they are maximizing, they're compressing our tax rate down. And the only thing we have is our 13 pennies that we approved from the TR we did, like I said, back in 2011. But the comptroller we still have to fill out this paperwork that says to calculate what the voter approved rate is and what they call the no new revenue tax rate. So obviously, if our values jump 26%, then in theory, we've got to lower our tax rate because we're not allowed just to make more money just because the values go up. So we have to do this calculation. So when you adopt the tax rate, and currently the voter approved tax rate, that's only, on the INS. We're gonna go out for bonds. You have to get the voters to approve. You gotta get your community to approve if you wanna go into debt for voter approved bond debt. We have control over that. That's what we control. The M&O side, I'd say we really don't have control of that. The state TA decides the compression, they decide what our rate is. So we could have an election, if we wanted to raise the M&O rate above what the state compresses us to, we'd have to have another, they don't call them TREs anymore, they call them VADERs, voter-approved tax acts. And we are, since we do control the INS rate, and we are keeping the INS rate high, and we increase it a little bit with the defeasance resolutions, so we can control that, and we can do that. But it is the no new revenue tax rate is a calculation that the comptroller makes us do, but obviously with our values going up, they're gonna say, we really should have lowered our tax rate down to probably, and you'll see it here, you'll see it on the resolution to adopt the taxes. Really, based upon what the comptroller says, not taking into account the rules about how schools get funded, our tax rate should drop down into the 60s, 60 cents. So we still have to state that, and we say that, but we're gonna adopt the tax rate that TA allows us per state funding rules to do. But we still have to say that we're adopting a rate higher than what the comptroller says our rate should be. So we're just jumping through some hoops. And I think it's a way for the state to say, you're still taxing more than what you're supposed to be able to. That's what I think it is. So, like I said, the no new tax rate revenue tax rate calculation doesn't take into account any of the TEA or the state funding rules that control how we actually adopt our tax rate. And it doesn't have anything to do with the actual collection rates. The state comptroller doesn't care that you have a big taxpayer that didn't pay their bill. They're saying that based upon your values going up, your rate should drop accordingly. So there's the specific language, and you'll see it when you get to the resolution to adopt the tax rate. It's going to say that we're increasing our tax rate, but we're only increasing our tax rate above what this no new revenue calculation, which really has nothing to do with what we can actually set our taxes. And I'm probably not explaining that well. But basically, the comptroller says, based upon the basic calculations of your values going up so much, your rate should be this low. But the state of Texas and TA says we can set our rate here. But when you adopt your tax rate, you still have to say that you're adopting a rate higher than what the comptroller says. But we're adopting the rate that we're allowed to adopt the TA rules and public school funding rules. Any other questions?
Just a quick question on the food service item. So we're going to be under 679,000. How much were capital expenditures, or how much did that cost us?
I would say all of it, probably.
Okay, everything?
All of it is capital expenditures. Yes, because normally without capital expenditures replacing major equipment, we normally collect enough from our federal reimbursements and the money that we do collect from the a la carte items and adults can't eat for free. We do have income from adult meals and catering. Normally, without major capital outlay, it's sustainable. It's normally I have a balanced food service budget, but since because of COVID and we're still getting supply chain. TDA sends us extra money. We're still getting money for supply chain issues. We're getting money. We're constantly getting extra money from TDA for things. So it's 100% capital.
I have a question on that also. There seems to be there's quite a bit of urgency to spend the money. What happens if we don't? Do we lose it or do we get fined?
No, we don't lose it, but I get a firm and stern directive from TDA that you're not spending it because they want you to spend your excess fund balance within 12 months.
Okay.
And what I learned is the last time on the financial report, I said, here's our plans. We've got a plan to spend it down, but and even in their instructions, they say, if it's going to take more than a year, explain it. So I did my own explanation about, we're doing everything we can to spin it down. It's going to take more than 1 year because of this. And then I mentioned that we're going on CEP at 85%. That's going to take some of it. And then I got this really stern, basically, why are you taking more than a year to pay off, to reduce your excess fund balance? Even though their instructions said provide an explanation, now I learned you don't follow their instructions. You just say, we're going to do it all. They're forcing you to lie and say, I'm going to spend it all in a year. And then when I don't, next year, I'm going to say, I'll spend it all, or I'm going to spend it all in a year. So that's my rough relationship with the Texas Department of Agriculture. because unfortunately I've had to do many corrective action plans with them because I can't seem to do anything. But I will say, and Patrick can attest, anything you send to the Texas Department of Agriculture, it's like an insurance claim from a really bad insurance company. Denied, you did it wrong. And then you go, well, I did it just like I did it last year. No, the rules changed, or something changed, so. Nothing, I've not seen any indication that they would take any money back. I just have to keep telling them, we're working on it. We have a plan to spend it within a year. We might not be able to because like the tables, we order the tables, it's just taking forever for them to come in. I mean, I can't control, I'm trying to spend this money, but the tables haven't come in yet. So that's another reason why I anticipated, I budgeted it, I want to spend it, we want the new tables, but they haven't come in yet, so they haven't hit the book, the expense hasn't hit the books yet, so. Well, if there are no further questions, that concludes the public hearing on the budget.
Okay.
Contract. Thank you.
Philip. So we're gonna go ahead and go into the special call for.
No, you asked for public comment, for the public hearing.
Pledge and everything. Yeah, we're gonna go on to the pledge. We can go ahead and move on to public comment for the public hearing. And the next item on the agenda is public comment. Before we begin, I will remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling public comments as found in Board Policy BED Local. Because this is not a regular board meeting, public comment shall be limited to discussion of items on tonight's agenda. Each public comment speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board, except that non-English speakers will be allowed a maximum of 6 minutes to address the board. Please keep your comments or criticisms civil and courteous. Avoid using profanity and refrain from making personal attacks on others during your opportunity to speak. Yelling, inappropriate, uncivil, or discriminatory comments will not be permitted. Lastly, we ask that you do not discuss students who are not your own child. I also caution you that your public comment should not complain about individual school employees by name or position, or other than your own child identify students. As presiding officer, I'm obligated to determine whether a person addressing the board has attempted to administratively resolve any complaints or grievances about which they want to address the board that involve district officers or employees. In the event your comment constitutes a complaint or charge against an employee or officer, it may be necessary for me to interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the school district's formal grievance procedures or to have the item heard in executive session depending on the nature of the complaint. Any concerns or complaints regarding individual district employees, students, or parents must be resolved via the district's grievance processes. Thank you, and our first speaker is Drake Kay.
Actually, wrote a speech. I don't think it would be violating anything. Dear active board members, I am sure y'all are aware of who I am, and I want to be abundantly clear. I do not desire to be here, but I feel I have a moral obligation to be here, as I am continuing to be a very concerned citizen, especially as I watch y'all's actions within my garden. I have heard the horror stories from the community, and I cannot allow this board to take no internal corrective action any further, as I fear it enables the behaviors of 2 of our board members here today. I believe this board wants justice for the community, and I request in good faith for you all to take action. The use of fear on the community in my garden has to stop now. To give you a little background on who I am, I graduated from a nearby school district, and after watching my teachers open up their pockets to ensure the students had the best education possible while being underpaid, and after recently talking to so many local Samaritans, I truly believe the staff of this district to be denied the respect, financial compensation, and attention they deserve by this board, especially at this very critical point in time. I request for this board to immediately take internal inventory to who is an asset and who is a liability on this board, and give your hard-working staff the raise they deserve. Actions speak louder than words. A 2%, 3%, or any other nominal raise will upset me greatly. And due to my moral obligation to the people, we need to offer staff a raise that will encourage the staff to keep up their hard work moral integrity, and dedication, and encourage new teachers and community members to want to grow with this district. My best friend since 4th grade from Kansas, he's moved down here to the local garden in Texas around the same time I did, and he is now a father living in a local school district. In Kansas, I studied and educated myself at one of the top public school districts in the nation. My sports number was 643, and we didn't have none of the shenanigans that I know were going on here. I want my grandchild, my godchild, to have all of his civil rights and liberties protected when he is ready to start school. I have lost sleep over these past few weeks to ensure my garden is safe for my godchild when he is of age to attend primary school. I would like to end with a letter written by one of my heroes, Martin Luther King Jr., and he wrote this letter while wrongfully sitting in jail 1 year prior to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which I fear 2 of these board members sitting here today seem to have forgotten.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
point of
no,
order.
point of
Point of order. That's
You can't do
defamatory against 2 of our board members.
So that'll be your first warning.
Yes, ma'am.
So if it
That's the
continues,
second time he says it, though.
if it continues, you'll have to be removed.
Yes, ma'am. I would just like to get on to my speech by Martin Luther King Jr. He wrote it 1 year prior to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In his letter that he wrote while wrongfully sitting in Birmingham, Alabama jail on April 16th, 1963 read, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality.
You are at
Tied
your 3-minute mark.
in a single garment of destiny, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." As a final note, I'll be present at every future board meeting until the staff gets the 15% raise, or at least a raise that I think is acceptable for all the suffering the local citizens employed within TMISD have powered through over the past few years due to leadership's failure to take internal corrective measures. And I expect the staff obtains no less than a 12% raise without delay on retroactive payments. The staff matters, the children matters, the community matters, the people matters. Best regard, Drake Cabler, very concerned citizen.
Thank you, Drake. Okay, we're going to move on to our special called board meeting. We're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. It is 7:53 p.m. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas Pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Our board mission statement, Tolosa Midway Independent School District educates every student to be a lifelong learner, a person of integrity, and a positive contributor to society. We don't have any public comment for this special called board meeting. We're going to go ahead and convene in closed session. The board will convene in closed meeting as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act to discuss items allowed by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.071-076, .082, .0821, .083, .084. The board is going into closed session and it is 7:54 p.m. It is 8:59 p.m. and we have reconvened from closed session. And we do have business to take care of.
And to table. You don't have 5 minutes? That's fine. It's right here.
All right. Business from closed session. I move to authorize the superintendent and legal counsel to proceed as discussed in closed session and move that we end all negotiations with opposing counsel regarding EEOC charge number 31C-2023-01066 and EEOC 31C-2023-00170. And then moving,
That's your motion?
that's mine.
That's your motion? Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Kim and a second by Ben. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to 5B. Make a motion to table the discussion and action to propose the termination of the term contract of the Coordinator of Advanced Academies and authorization to superintendent to send notice to employee.
Tracy, can you put the deck up?
That's how you do it. What we did was postpone some.
Now we're moving on to discussion action item number 1. It's a report, administrative budget guidelines for 2023-2024 and 2024-2025. This is report only.
Madam President, members of the board, this is a brief living document that will become more comprehensive and more specific as we move through the budget year. Which one do I?
Up and down.
It never works for me, Chrissy.
Okay.
Can you just do it?
Yes, I got you.
Thank you. So, having said that, we've had robust discussion with the public hearing on many of these things that we're going to move forward with in the preceding agenda items. But you need to hear from me regarding some very significant, immediate steps that we are going to take place. So we've put together what we call 4 basic specific budget priority items. And these 3 are dedicated resources to our highest priorities. We know that the state, with a $32 billion surplus, has only allocated us $10 per kid for safety and security. However, Mr. Carroll showed you a deficit of perhaps over $200,000, $250,000 in keeping our students and staff safe. I would argue that regardless of where we're at financially, and regardless of what type of deficit we have, that safety and security is our highest priority and should not ever be compromised. Number 2 is high-quality instruction. We've made a transition to HQIM, which is the TEA-recommended district curriculum. It's really aligned with STAR EOC 2.0, but it's expensive. We spent in excess of $500,000 this year, and we'll have that same expenditure next year, and maybe a little higher, because I anticipate primary will transition into RLA. They're currently only doing math. I anticipate perhaps science, and perhaps the high school will venture into HQIM. And then number 3, investment in our teachers. From the 21-22 school year, where we had a significant number of staff leave, and then we had on average an 8.5% salary increase for teachers, and a 5% increase to everybody else. We saw that drop by 19 teachers. I don't see how we can't continue to remain competitive and invest in the group of teachers that will have the most impact on our children other than their parents. Next. We need to maximize what I call categorical funding. Items that we can use professional federal funds for, we need to make sure that's being done, whether it's Title I flexibility, whether it's professional development, or whether it's using a very innovative form of capturing ADA, optional flexible day funding, which Dr. White's going to do a short presentation following me. That may give us an opportunity to recapture some additional funding, even if a student isn't here, if they're labeled at risk, that we haven't done before. This, I think, is our biggest low-hanging fruit, and it's energy efficiency. We cannot continue to run our high school 24/7 on Saturdays and Sundays when nobody's in the building. Now, we do not have the ability, correct, to isolate areas of the school.
Very minimal because of the chiller system. You have to run almost 3/4 of the system.
Will we, if the bond passes, and we invest in HVAC, will we have the opportunity to transition to HVAC that could do that for us?
Yes.
Okay. No one uses the building on Sundays, and energy is still running. That's why you saw in Mr. Carroll's presentation, I think, a very conservative decrease in utilities. We're not partnering with a firm. We're not paying any money to a firm. We're going to start out using common sense, turn the lights off, turn your computer off, turn the AC off, and go from there. We want to look at 4 focus areas: energy, waste, water, and printing. You know, printing generally comes from campus budgets, but there's, I think, significant opportunities to reduce those printing costs. And the less money they pay on printing, the more money they can use to supplement instruction and do some attendance incentives for children. Attendance matters. We are looking at using some of those funds of $125,000 increase to the sub-budget to give teachers $100 every 6 weeks if they come to school every day. Not a lot of money, but there's something about getting a $100 bill that may resonate with people. And then also asking our campuses and our PTAs to find a way to encourage incentives for student attendance. I predict that our campuses will be placed on a budget for substitutes. I do want to give kudos to primary. I was on that campus today. I believe they had 5 or 6 absences, no subs. They consolidated classrooms. We need to do that at high school, we need to do that at middle school, and we need to do that at intermediate. Our sub budget, $30,000 every pay period, is killing us. And then we need to develop a fairly comprehensive messaging campaign to our parents, educating them. The biggest cost for a child not coming to school is not a substitute, or it's not the $58 that we receive from the state for that kid. It's their education. They're missing that opportunity to be with a credentialed instructor. And that's a, you can't quantify that, but that's a very high cost. So those are things that we are going to start, some immediately, some down the road, optional flexible.
Okay.
I guess, can I make comments on that before he starts?
Sure.
I guess two different things that I would like to see, or maybe three. In this is a variance put on our budget. So because you're never gonna hit the exact number that is on the budget, that's impossible. But the board needs to provide some guidelines for you of plus or minus 3% or 4%, and then, yeah. The second thing.
That may be in the strategic plan, but I'll have to check. I can't say for sure. You're going to get what I call the near draft final of the strategic plan tomorrow in connections, but do you know if there's any variances in there? I know there's GPMs from Lone Star
That's where you're
Government.
gonna see some of it.
Okay, all right. If not, we will put that in there.
And then for this year, yes, we've proposed a deficit budget. But even though we're starting that way, the goal should be to end
Yes.
not at a deficit. So
Yes.
spelling that out somewhere, right?
Yes.
Increasing all year.
Yes.
And then the last one is,
And how we will monitor that is, there's a budgetary term called actuals. And every month, Mr. Carroll's going to bring you where we are with each function.
yeah, so not just where we are, but in terms of utilization of where we should be according
Yes.
that month. Yeah.
Yes. You'll get a percentage based on the school year.
So, yeah, okay. And then the last one, it is very tough with ADA because it can go any which way, yeah.
Well, we, unlike the private sector, we have to staff for enrollment.
Correct,
But we
so-
get paid for ADA.
Correct. So either us as a board or as a school district pushing resolutions or comments or letters to our legislature on how important enrollment-based funding is for schools to not continually be passing these deficit budgets like several of our neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Those
just,
are my three.
it's not just us.
I do worry, and as more as a grandfather than as a superintendent, that there's a concerted effort to demonize and underfund public education. And public education, since our country has been a country, has been the great equalizer among all of us. And it really worries me when you see money not flowing, when you see accountability standards rising, when you see the rhetoric that we're having rampant pornography in our libraries, that we're teaching CRT, that we're advocating gender changes. None of that is going on in TM, or I would guess our neighbors. Absolutely none of it. And I worry that that message is resonating with the public and making it so with a $32 billion surplus, you can say, schools, you're not getting anything, and there's not this outcry like we saw when the state said, teachers, even though you're certified, you're going to have to take a test. We saw an outcry there. We haven't seen that. That worries me. I'm gonna get off, my rant's over.
Yeah, so I think it's important, though, TM steps up to outcry, though.
Yeah, write the letters.
I agree.
Because you've been on the board a really long time, how many times have we passed it, or a deficit budget was brought to us? Like, it's starting to severely affect.
They tried one time, but we were able to go past it. Well, I forget what happened, was it TRE?
Is that your cash flow year?
No, that was before my time.
Uh,
We haven't had a deficit since I've been here.
Okay, well, it must have been a while then, because we thought we were gonna get one, but something happened, I do not recall.
Yeah, there was no,
And we didn't.
This is my first.
next to nothing in terms of new funding from the state. And so it's very important that, yeah, if no one else is outcrying, we at least outcry.
Dr. White?
Yes, sir. So kind of on that same topic about just where can we possibly get new funding, new revenue, one thing that we are exploring currently is the optional flexible school day program. And so what is nice about this program is that it literally provides flexible hours and days of attendance for students who meet at least one of the requirements as spelled out in TEC 29.0822A. And essentially that covers at-risk status for students. And there's several other items that are contained within that code, but really and truly we're focusing right now on the qualifications for at-risk status for students. And so ultimately the goal of the program is to increase student achievement as well as improve graduation rates for students that are at risk of dropping out, who have identified as having attendance issues or just simply behind in core subject courses. And so for our purposes, and as we've talked a little bit more about how we're going to roll this out at ACC, is starting with at-risk students, students that have attendance issues, students that have been denied credit for one or more courses or classes. And so that will be our target population to begin. And if we are able to identify those students, and if those students and with their parent get written permission to be a part of this program, they can be eligible to be enrolled and participate in OFSDP. And so how does this work? Well, in a nutshell, in order to capture ADA for any student in OFSDP, they have to record at least 45 minutes of instruction each day. And as long as that student is able to accrue at least 240 minutes or 4 hours or half a day, they count as one ADA for that day. And so rather than looking at this from whole big picture, is the student in the seat at 10 o'clock for ADA capture, it's a matter of how many minutes did that student do per day. Was it at least 45 minutes? If so, they're eligible to be counted for some ADA. If they give you at least 240 minutes, then they count for full ADA. And so you do that enough times over the course of a year, you add up all the minutes, and there goes your ADA, and you calculate it from there, okay? And so, for instance, if a student is attending school at 75% rate, they come for 75% of the year. If the student then can just give us that 240 minutes per day, and again, those 240 minutes can be applied in any class, at any course, could be first period, fifth period, eighth period, and then outside of the school day, because again, the minutes don't necessarily have to be captured during the traditional school day. As long as we can record them and we have documentation and proof of such, they will count as that full ADA. And if we can have a pattern in place where they're able to give us that 240 minutes each day, and assuming that that student was a prior at 75% ADA, we should be able to get at least a minimum of $1,500 per student in funding. And so options include weekend or night classes, extended day classes. We could run traditional morning, afternoon, and evening. We can do throughout the school year, so we're not limited to the traditional 178-day academic calendar. Intersession or summer breaks, given our intersessions, we can put together a really nice plan for our students to come and capture minutes. And of course, credit recovery classes.
Are most of our at-risk kids attendance, is there there are ADA issues also?
Yes.
Okay,
There's our,
ADA, grades,
yes.
discipline.
okay.
Yeah, there's a clear pattern in place with all
Okay.
that.
When you say outside, that they can put these mids on the outside the school, an example of what?
That could be credit recovery online.
Online?
Yep.
Will we have to hire more people at ACC?
No.
That's the beauty of it. It just allows us to do some different things outside the traditional classroom setting. And so with board action, if you all are willing to move forward with applying and submitting an application, we could bring that to you all for your review at the September 18th meeting. And if so, at that point, if you do approve the application, we would submit it to TEA for their approval, which is a 30 days or so turnaround period for their review. And as soon as their review is done, and if and when we do receive approval from TEA, we could potentially begin OFSDP at ACC at the start of the grading period number 3, which is approximately October 30th.
And will we just apply for ACC, or can it be applied, because I think I heard a comment that there's over 500 kids at the high school that are at risk.
Yes.
So we can apply it there also?
We could if we wanted to.
Yes.
We could build the application any which way we want it to be built. We are just recommending at this time to start with ACC as a pilot, and also for us to just understand with our eSchool system, what kind of components that have to be built into the system to be able to manage the minutes tracking.
Perhaps we'd move to the high school for the spring semester.
How many kids are at the high school?
For at-risk,
Well, no, just,
just in general?
Yeah.
A little over 10.
About 11.
Yeah, say right underneath
half
that.
of them are considered at risk?
Yeah, but you can be at risk for your parents are divorced.
Yeah, there's all.
There's like
different
14
criteria.
different.
15 technically criteria that allow you to kind of be captured that way. But also too, this doesn't just talk about at-risk, it's also about students who have been identified with attendance issues or students who have simply just fallen behind in credits. And so technically those kind of go together with at-risk, but not necessarily. It could be a student that has never been at risk, but all of a sudden, a semester, we learn that they're struggling for whatever reason, they could qualify at that point and benefit from the program.
So you could qualify for it for a little while and then come off the program?
Correct. You can move a
That's
student.
kind of the goal.
You can, yes, in theory, you wouldn't want a student to stay on this because the best way to
You want
educate
them
a
to be in the
student is
classroom.
face-to-face, traditional setting. But this allows us to do some different things in order to maybe possibly get them back to that setting, but not necessarily they could potentially stay on this long-term just because it's beneficial to them and their schedule. For instance, if we're talking about this in phases and we kind of begin with ACC and layer in high school, then we could open it up to expanding it to students that are part of Warpath Academy as soon as they receive their early college high school designation. That's another way to allow for the master schedule to be built to where we're not overloading the master schedule to accommodate Warpath. We could almost create a separate schedule by putting students that are in Warpath on the OFSD program and creating different types of schedules for the students depending on the courses they take, the activities they're involved in at the high school. And so we could individually create a schedule using OFSDP without compromising the traditional schedule of the high school. And when I say compromise, I mean having to manipulate FTEs or add additional FTEs to accommodate this type of non-traditional scheduling. And so it just really opens up the flexibility and the opportunities for us to do some different things and to also better meet the needs of our students.
So for these students that need multiple at-risk and they're in it for a short period, let's say a semester.
Sure.
Because something's happening in their home life. I don't know what our policy and procedures are now, but can we target those kids to also, especially at the high school level, like part of their 240 minutes, like a portion of that is with the social worker or something?
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes.
Help them holistically.
That would be built into the student plan. Essentially, that would just be called the student schedule, and that would just be part of the application process that we would be implementing something like that for X amount of students for this reason. And that would, you all would have an opportunity to review all that prior to any sort of submission happening. And so I did include the list currently that includes all of the district/campuses that are currently OFSDP approved. Al's High School, Aransas Pass, just to name a few. I know Kingsville, King High School is one, Flower Bluff is one. So we do currently have some of our neighboring districts that are currently participating. And so we currently have some plugs into network with them as well to kind of understand how it's gone, what have they done. Because I know at least Flower Bluff, they've been doing it for several years now, because this is nothing new.
How long was the application process, did you say?
I guess are you talking in terms of building it or writing it or?
If you submitted if we approved it in September for you to go do it, when could we be able to implement at ACC?
In the spring?
Yeah, we could implement it as soon, if we get it to you all at the next board meeting, and if we assume that TA is gonna take the 30 days until we hear back from them, I would say the soonest we could do it would be at the third grading period, which is kind of end of October, beginning of November. But that's the nice thing about this, is that we can submit an application at any time.
As soon as possible.
Yeah, I would agree. Any other questions? If not, the application will be forthcoming.
Okay. Agenda item number 2, discuss and consider approval of the 2022-2023 budget amendments.
I have number 7. Do you have?
No, that's number 2.
I'm lost. Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Carroll?
You have the attachment that has all the year-end budget amendments. They're either to cover a shortfall that happened during the year, or the smaller ones might be because there are a few functions that are only one thing, like JJP went a little bit over, so I need to increase that function to cover that function by itself. One of the biggest adjustments is also because of the Flint Hills payment that we received in August. So that significantly bumps up our tax revenues, that significantly bumps up our recapture because we have to turn around, we're gonna owe $5 million of that payment. So it's also to account for that. And because we're getting so much, we're getting to keep $1.6 million of it, our state revenue is plummeting to that's the result of the payment. But the other ones are to take care of deficits like the security deficit, the substitute deficit, and then rolled in with the Flint Hills payment. State funding is going down anyway because we're getting so much additional tax revenue is the shortfall because of the ADA. But then I'm also correcting for the interest that we did collect. That was much higher than what I budgeted, some revenues that went up. And like I said, there might be some smaller ones that cover the individual functions that only have 1 or 2 things in them. So they're very sensitive, they're very, for example, like JJP, it's a function by itself. I just need to add a little bit more to that to cover the year. And also the big transfer out to the food service fund for the free meals that were provided.
So for salaries and benefits, that was like $880,000, and then deducted from other accounts, so it only came out to like $500,000. But how did all of that?
The biggest part of that, about a little over 200,000 is subs. Of that 512,000 number, a big chunk of it is subs. There is a small portion there was some more of the extra duty like intercession and remedial stuff that the categorical funds couldn't cover, ESSER couldn't cover, so the general fund had to cover it. And then there was some salary, I already budgeted for potential salary savings. I didn't quite hit all the salary savings that I thought would happen.
What does that mean?
That means like I'm already budgeting for I don't budget 100% of everybody's salary because we normally have turnover, especially with the paraprofessionals and with the maintenance and tradespeople. Yes, it would be nice if we were fully staffed at 36 custodians or how many we're supposed to have. But we normally never, I don't need the fund for 36 because I don't really have a problem though with that. There's always I still have savings with that. Even though I budget some salary savings on the tradespeople, I usually still have savings on that. This year, the savings with the certified people, but the biggest thing was subs and also TRS. I was a little under in estimating TRS for the year. And the main reason for that was the surcharges. I wasn't properly calculating the surcharge, taking into account the surcharges. But that's why I had to, I think that was probably about 150,000 is the TRS. But that 512,000 number, that's everything. That's salaries, the tradespeople, subs, benefits, everything, Medicare, the additional costs from the health insurance. Like I said, I had way more people participate in the health insurance than I'd originally budgeted for. That's in there. That was probably about 50,000 for the health insurance.
I guess I'm assuming the TRS stuff and all the healthcare stuff, like you really don't know that till the end of the year. But how early did we see the subs trending and why is this? Yeah, at work, because I never submit all my change orders at the end of my project. I submit them throughout. So one, why wasn't that being done here? And then two, can we get to that point?
I can definitely get to that point. I guess it was, I had until the end of the year to fix it. I waited till the end of the year to fix it. It's not a.
No, but no.
But I understand what you're saying. Like, I understand like the food service thing. I had a guesstimate of what that was.
Yeah.
I just didn't do it till the end of the year.
Okay. I think it's important if they're done timely, so then when newer initiatives come up, the board is aware of, oh, we've deviated X amount. Okay, let me weigh that. Yes, let's go forward with it. Versus not having that information.
Right.
And then just hearing, yep, we're good. Yeah, there's nothing to weigh items against. One thing that I really did like, and even though it's like a deficit, but there was $150,000 in just beyond district travel and athletics.
Yeah.
That's super awesome. Like our kids are going places, like they're moving higher up in the.
Yes.
Doing great things.
Yes, and I would say in a normal year where I don't have the sub issue or the security issue or the legal issue or those other things,
It balances.
I wouldn't even have to bring that amendment to you because I've got other funds that didn't get spent, and that's all in Function 36, and I'm usually pretty safe with Function 36, so I would never even bring an amendment to cover that. But because of all the other things that happened, it was like the perfect storm that required me to have to do that. But yeah, it is an awesome thing. I will say that we generally do spend more on Beyond District than what I budget. I just don't have to bring it to y'all as an amendment. It is a great problem to have.
Yes, it is.
And Philip, I'm looking at your budget amendment form here.
Yes.
With a lot of the changes matching over here, but your budget amounts, this is 22 million, this is 19 million, and your increase and decrease is 509,000, this is 477.
Right, because this is the combination of all the amendments. So This is the total for function 11. This is only the budget for these payroll and payroll benefit accounts. It's not the whole budget. I'm only adjusting the payroll-related accounts there, and function 11 of my adjustment is only that. The 22 at the beginning is, that includes function 11 supplies, contracted services, everything else, not just payroll-related things.
I made a cheat sheet to where I put all the justifications per the function. So then I saw the amendment per the function.
That girl. I will tell you, I mean, I have a spreadsheet that I plug in the changes here and it automatically flows into that front one. But I will tell you, if you go through every amendment and do every plus and minus for the 11, it'll total that summary at the beginning.
I got you, Okay.
And then, yeah, last comment, yeah, I think June or July, like, we were projecting like a $200,000, $300,000 deficit. And then all of a sudden in August, we got to the 2 million something, from the paperwork that you were giving us. How does that happen?
Well, I guess,
Is that
I don't remember exactly the order of everything, but I know initially, looking at what the ADA was actually gonna turn out to be, that by itself was $3.6 million. I knew I had $1 million of interest income that would cover that, and I was just fortunate enough that we got the Flint Hills payment,
Very
that
fortunate.
figured out that we were gonna get to keep 1.6 of that. So just looking at those numbers, I was going off the 3.6 minus the million, now we're down to 2.6. Get the Flint Hills money, that gets us down to 2. I'm not sure, exactly what the event was, but, and what exactly we said, but I know I didn't go from 3.6 million to just 200,000, but
I think it was 5.
it might have been the context of,
55.
but
Well, I think your point's very well taken, that for the 23-24 budget, we have to do monthly updates on where we're at.
Updates and change orders on, more frequently.
I'm not familiar with the change.
Amendments, more amendments, sorry, same.
You used to do that quite often, didn't you, at one time?
well, if something happened, I would bring the amendment. And I used to give financials every month. And I do realize that's a detriment, and I have to immediately correct that.
And
I'm not
since
gonna
I've
get-
been
I'm
on the
not-
board, we've gotten like a handful of amendments, so
Yeah.
I was honestly just a little shocked to see how large this one was, because I had been getting some.
Typically, though, at the end of every budget year, there'll be budget cleanups. I don't know if they measure this amount, but any budget I've ever been involved with, they'll clean the budget up at the end of the year.
It's happened every year, hasn't it?
Yes, but normally it's not to cover deficits, it's just to cover
Yeah,
fluctuations in
moving money.
functions, because,
Correct.
yes, I can try to budget for all the TRS for all the functions, but sometimes they can fluctuate a little bit, so I need to do a correction. Usually the bottom number is 0, I'm just saying I need a little bit more in 11, or I need a little bit more in 36, and it's just to correct the functions, so my functions are all reallocated, so all my functions are not underwater. Because that's what you adopted the budget at, so I gotta keep the functions above negative. So normally, the amendments are just those reallocations, and the bottom line, it doesn't change the bottom at all. I'm just saying this function needs to go up and this one needs to go down. And then there's, like I said, the one-liners like JJAP. Sometimes I need to add just a little bit more at the end of the year because it's by itself in that one function, so I gotta cover it once I know what the actual expenses are gonna be. The reason it went up a little bit this year It's because CCISD keeps starting school serve, because we get billed, the JJP is on the CCISD school calendar, and we get billed per day. And since they're starting their school earlier, this was the highest August bill that we've ever had, because they're in school more days in August than they've ever been before. So we missed it a little bit this year because of that. And sometimes like we mentioned, we sell seats and we don't spend our total cost of 2 seats because we don't need them and we can sell them to other districts.
Yeah, so I looked at the numbers on, had we not gotten the Flint Hills payment, you would have brought forth somewhere near like a $4 million deficit, and that's just insane.
Yeah.
That we went over that much and we're not aware of it. And again, largely due to attendance. And that would have brought our general fund down close to the 10 million mark. Had Flint Hills not paid us, but we hit our attendance targets, budget would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Like, we would have had a surplus of 400,000. And we wouldn't have any of these discussions, right? If we hit our attendance mark, and that's how important the attendance mark is, and for y'all to keep us updated on how that's affecting us financially. And if both of those things happen, if Flint Hills paid us and we had hit our attendance mark, you would come with us to total opposite, net increase of almost close to 3 million. General fund soaring to 16 million, like that.
Correct.
We're lucky with the Flint Hills. A lot of work to do with tracking amendments throughout the year and keeping us updated on how attendance is actually affecting us.
Where did the HQIM program fall into
The majority of that expense was out of title, out of categorical funds, out of title and the instructional materials allotment. That's a separate fund that we have.
Okay. I just didn't see it on
The bulk of that
anything.
expense was not out of the general fund.
Okay.
There might have been a little bit, but the biggest bulk of it was Title I and instructional materials allotment.
Okay. Any more questions? Comments? Okay.
Madam President, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the 2022-2023 budget amendments as presented.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Leo and a second by Paul Mastella, that the board approve the 2022-2023 budget amendments as presented. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to discussion action item, agenda item number 3, discuss and consider authorization for the superintendent/deputy superintendent to make end-of-year budget amendments/adjustments not to exceed $35,000 to close out the 2022-2023 budget.
Mr. Carroll?
This is just a blanket request that I ask every year, just to give me a little bit more flexibility. I've gone over these numbers exhaustively, but once we start closing out the year and getting ready for the audit and making and double checking everything, sometimes I might have an audit entry that I need to do before we submit the file to the auditor. And just in case that throws a function off, I just like the ability to be able to adjust the functions. This would not include, it shouldn't include like an increase in expenditure. It should just be the ability to maybe do another adjustment and say, well, I need a little bit more in 36, and I can take that from 51.
Some zero.
A sum 01. I will tell you, and if I do feel I need to exercise this, if you grant me this authority, if I do feel that I need to use it, what I do is I come back and I present a budget amendment. I present it just like it would look like if I brought the amendment to you before the end of the year and show you this is what it changed and this is the function that went up and this is what you I give you the details of what you pre-approved me authorization to do. I'm hoping that I don't need it, I won't need it. It's just like a little safety net that I can clean up functions if I need to.
Do you think that the 35,000 would be enough?
Yeah, you know, I don't know what the good number is. I will tell you, I had never done this before until Mr. Sumner got here, and he had done it in his previous district, and I cleared it with my auditor, and it is legal, but, you know, coming up with a number, I really can't say. I'm just gonna go with the 35. That's what I've been using. And like I said, it's really just a little security blanket in case I need to do a little budget, functional cleanup. But obviously, it should only be a zero-sum.
Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Madam President, it is the administration's recommendation that the board authorize the superintendent, deputy superintendent to make end-of-year budget amendments, adjustments not to exceed $35,000 to close out the 2022-2023 budget.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Would you like to second it?
Okay, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion made by Leo and a second by Paul for the board to authorize the superintendent, deputy superintendent to make end-of-year budget amendments, adjustments not to exceed $35,000 to close out the 2022-2023 budget. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Agenda item number 4, discuss and consider the 2023 to 2024 compensation plan.
Madam President, members of the board, prior to last year, there had not been a compensation plan for the district. And last year, it was, I believe, limited to teachers and administrators, or, we got a salary structure.
Certified people.
In moving forward, based on the TASB model and transparency and market, we are bringing this for your review and consideration. Ms. Riggs? Are you okay?
Yes. I get a little tired by the end of the
Do you
day.
need to sit down?
No, it's okay, sir. I'm okay. Well, good evening, Madam President, Boone, Mr. Van Matry, and Board of Trustees. As Mr. Van Matry said, I'll be talking about the 23-24 compensation plan. You know, in our budget guidelines that Mr. Van Matry gave earlier, you know, investing in our teachers is of our highest priority. And so after last board meeting, we went back and we looked at what we were proposing. And here is our new proposed teacher salary scale. Again, teachers, counselors, librarians, and registered nurses are paid off of the salary scale. We are recommending that the 0-year starting pay increase from $51,500 to $52,000. We are recommending a 2.5% pay increase for our teachers, and that is about an additional $1,000 for each teacher, including their step. They've already gotten their step raise. That is something that you approved at the June regular board meeting. This is an additional $1,000 on top of that. And this is what the pay scale would look like. We started, as Mr. Van Matry said, we started creating the pay scales for our administrative professionals. Philip started the foundation with that, and we made some tweaks to that. But we created a clerical paraprofessional pay scale and a manual trade. And so I just wanted to kind of tell you how that process worked and what the objectives are. The reason we want to have a internal pay scale that's done annually, this is something that will always change every year. Every year, salaries change at across districts, so you always want to make sure that you stay competitive with the market. But we want to be able to recruit employees. We want to make sure that we're offering competitive pay and that we're offering competitive starting salaries for new employees. We want to, of course, retain our employees because we feel we have the best here. So we want to make sure that we give great raises and that we're always working to move our pay scales to be with the market. We want to make sure that we constantly look at our pay scales to make sure that we're not overpaying for a job or underpaying for a job, because neither one of that is beneficial to the district if we're overpaying someone for a job or if we're underpaying. Having a pay scale, especially with minimum, mid, and maximum points, is very beneficial to the district because it allows us to be able to calculate raises, and it allows us to control our budgetary costs, because when we say it's going to be a raise percent of the midpoint, we know everyone's midpoint and we know how we're going to calculate that. And then, of course, it provides transparency. Everyone knows the methodology for how we calculated pay ranges, and they're able to see it on one place, which is usually our website. So what does that process look like? First, we have to do the data collection. I started by looking at how we currently pay our employees, and we identified trends about what range are we paying our paras, what range are we paying our groundskeepers, our teachers, our administrators. Then we look at the market, and we start gathering market data. You know, one of our great sources is TASB Human Resources. Every year they poll school districts and they ask, what do you pay for each job? How many people do you have? How many days do they work? How many hours do they work out of the day? And what is the average pay for those people on those jobs? For our auxiliary manual trades, we look at other places because we're not always looking to take a custodian from another school district. We're looking at outside industry. We're looking at hotels. We're looking at hospitals. What do they pay and what do we need to pay in order to attract those individuals? And then once we have all that information, we create pay structures that are competitive with the market. And then given, if there is budgetary allowance, we make accommodations to people's pay. Do we need to adjust? Do we need to increase the pay range? Do we need to move someone higher on the pay? And once we do that, we give those people the equity adjustments that they would need. So I know in the packet I had the pay scales for all three structures that we've been talking about. I just quickly wanted to show you that we're moving to a model where you have one pay grade, and every time you go up a pay grade, that job and those jobs that are classified within the pay grade keep getting higher. And so you're going to have a minimum pay for each job. If we hired somebody with no experience, this is the minimum amount of money they're going to make. The midpoint, which is really where we want our employees to be, because that's the target market, where that's what the market pays, is the midpoint. And then you have the maximum, because sometimes you're going to find someone, or you're going to have a job where you're going to want to pay someone maybe a little bit more than the market, because it's critical and it's hard to find. Usually those types of jobs, I think of DIACs, I think of LSSPs. We sometimes pay a little bit above the market because those people are really hard to find. And so you want to have a maximum of what you can pay. Now, some people will over time get to the maximum, but it's very rare, because if we're doing our jobs correctly, every year the minimum, midpoint, and maximum should go higher, because we should be adjusting with inflation. We should be adjusting with the market. And so really and truly, that great spot where we want our employees is to be the midpoint. So I've included the sample pay scale. Again, the three pay scales were in the board packet. In addition to that, we listed our master list of stipends so that you can view what stipends. We have them broken down by athletics, performing arts, co-curricular, and academic. And so you'll see for each, this is the administrative pay scale. You see each one of the pay grades. You see the minimum, the midpoint, and the max, and you see that as you go up, those dollar values go up, and then we have it broken out by the number of days that these individuals work and what their pay would be annually. So for everyone who are on these three pay grades, we are recommending a 1% of midpoint pay increase. And how would you calculate the pay increase? This is just a quick example. I think this is pay grade 2 on the administrative scale. You take that midpoint and you calculate, for this is a daily rate, 1%. So you would take the daily rate, multiply it times 1%, that's the total raise per day. Then you would multiply that times the number of days that an individual works, And it gives you the total raise, and then you add that to their current salary. And that's how you would calculate a 1% point midpoint raise. In doing this, I did find we did find some areas where we kind of felt that we weren't paying with the market, especially for adaptive ed, ESEC, and ISS paraprofessionals. When you look at other school districts, you will see that they generally get paid a little bit higher than regular classroom paraprofessionals. And they do have, their work is a little bit different, you know. They're working with our special needs children. They tend to, I guess, they tend to experience more, you know, sometimes they get hit or they get bit or they're having to work with difficult children. So that's why the market tends to pay them more. So I am recommending a 50-cent increase for those individuals. And then our grounds personnel, they just looked like they were slightly off where the market was. So I'm asking that we are able to adjust them an additional 50 cents in addition to the 1% rate. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's to you or to Philip, but this proposed, the increase that this raise would, did we just vote on that on the proposal? Was it already in the budget?
No, that was the amendments.
No, you haven't voted on it. It was in my budget presentation at the public hearing, the slide that I said, these proposals, based upon the base budget from last year, and the difference from this to this year is about, on that slide, I think it was 400 and something thousand.
Shade of $500,000.
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just presented at the budget, at the public hearing on the budget slide.
But the step's already been done, I'm sorry.
Correct.
The
Yes,
step's already
that
been done.
number reflects the teachers being on, they'd already gone up their step based upon what y'all approved in June. And then it includes the scale that we presented, the 2.5%. It includes that number, and it includes the adjustments that she talked about and the 1% from midpoint of everybody else.
The step is around $400 annually.
Was it just that 400,000 in the budget slide, or was it also the benefits?
It's also that too. That
So-
slide was just the salary part, and then in the benefit side, but remember, that number's a little bit higher because I was low last year, so I gotta make up, it's kinda like the property insurance. I gotta make up for what I was off last year and then bump up for the additional. So if you add, in the benefits, but remember the benefits one also has additional money for health insurance. But the benefits slide, I think, was 327,000 plus the 400,000, so for total
800.
benefits, it's about 800,000. But most of those numbers are driven by gross salaries. The insurance one is the only, that's driven by the participation, the number of people that take the insurance.
Vanessa, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, looking at the stipends, there's a great variation in the stipends from 500 to 10,000, 400, 7,000. How do you determine stipends? And are those included as part of the salary, or is that in addition to their salary?
It's an addition.
It's an addition? So if a youth activities, and I'm just looking at this printout, if a youth activities head in a district gets, I'm just gonna throw a number out there, 75, that's their base salary, they get an additional 10,400 for a stipend?
If he was employed, yes, if whatever his salary would be, he would also get, he or she would get that amount on top.
How are the stipends determined?
I'm going to be quite honest with you. I focused more on the pay scales for the admin professional, the clerical, and the manual trades. These were kind of already in place.
So there's no increase on the stipends page. We're just documenting as is.
Correct.
Okay.
So-
You did, back in March, y'all did approve, we did it, like I think I mentioned.
The
We did
EOC.
approve the end of course and STAR test ones. We increased the English, science, and
Right.
social studies from 1,200 to, but other than that, these are what we've already had. There might have been a few tweaks. I was gonna look, I think we did, we might have added a few new ones. But how they're determined, I'm not gonna tell you that there's a set formula. I will tell you 99% of these have been in effect for a while. They haven't changed.
Are these commensurate with other high schools? Is that why it's like that, or?
You know, we have compared ourselves to other schools, and I will tell you, there are some that we pay more than other schools, and there's a lot that we pay less than other schools. I would tell you that I think on the athletic side, we're a little low, but I will tell you on the fine arts side, we're pretty competitive, and we might even be above scale. But you might correlate that to, we have some very successful fine arts programs and theater arts, that might be the correlation.
And I can tell you that TASB also does survey school districts on stipends, so that will be part of my more in-depth market review for next year. And that is something that I hope to bring to be able to show you, this is kind of what other school districts are doing, and this is kind of what we're doing.
And the question I was going to ask is, what index are you using or source for minimum, midpoint, and maximum pay scale ranges?
I'm kind of using the TASB models. I'm looking at other school districts, what their pay ranges are. But this year, this is my initial review of how we're paying. I kind of just, I downloaded all our pay, and you could start seeing our trends as to this is kind of where our bands are. We had a couple of outliers, of course, but that's how I started creating our bands. And I'll be honest with you, we are pretty competitive with the market. I do think there's tweaks that need to be made. We have some categories and some roles where maybe people get paid all the same amount of money and we're not really looking at years of experience. But those are the types of things that I really want to delve into for next year and bring recommendations. But we also have to look at the budget and what we can do. But those are all things that we've notated. I've been speaking to Philip and Mr. Van Matry, and these are all things that we want to adjust going forward. But I think this is a first great step of creating our bands, letting our employees see where they land. I'll be honest, usually when you do something like this for the first time, you do experience some heartburn because you start, well, why don't I get paid more than this or more than this person? And it's not, I always say when you look at a job, you're looking at the job, not the person who's in the job. It's what does the market require us to pay to retain that person, to keep that person, or to attract a person. And so sometimes that's really hard to get over. The other thing that I found, especially when we went to the TASB model at my previous district, is we have people who have wonderful loyalty to our district. We have rock stars who have been here, and so they want to know, well, why am I not at the max? And part of that is because the market is at the midpoint. That's where we want to get everyone, is to the midpoint. And so that's a really hard concept as well. That's hard to understand. But once we start getting through this and we really start adjusting, those are questions that I think we need to address, and that we need to meet with our employees and give them that knowledge and how the methodology is created.
So this is more like what you would see out in the corporate world, right? You know where you start, you know where your midpoint is, and you know where you're headed. I think it's a great incentive. I don't look at it negative, and the negativity that comes with anytime you're talking about salaries, it's always there, right? Someone always makes more than someone else. So I'm impressed with what y'all have done with this, because this is something that's needed, and everybody knows exactly where they fall and where they can go. Yeah, I think it's great.
So prior, we only had I guess, the same structure for admins. The only bands that changed on that were number 11, and then we added a 12th. And then for the paraprofessionals and buses, there wasn't really existing infrastructure.
There was no infrastructure for the clerical paraprofessionals. There was one for manual trades.
It wasn't as pretty, but yeah.
But on that one, you know, it was, you had to reach 5 years before, so I think this is a better way, you know, if the board gives a raise, everyone gets a raise. And so I think that's, you know, a
That
great-
one was also in 5-year increments, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And they got $1.
Yes, you had to work 5 years before you got a $1 raise. This way, here, we're on the midpoint, you know, we give a 3% raise, maybe you might get that 50 cents, 75 cents in 1 year instead of having to wait 5 years to get a $1. We want to keep our staff.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Any other discussion, comments? Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, the cost of living and everything, fuel, food, everything has gone up for everyone. It's just unfortunate we can't actually go beyond. But you have to stay within the ranges. I understand that aspect of it. And for teachers, just like everybody else, say 2.5 at the mid, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. It's unfortunate that the state doesn't realize, you know, they don't take into consideration all that stuff. All the extra money they have laying around because teachers who, you know, every one of those people up in the legislature had a teacher that got them there.
Yeah, none of us would be sitting here.
Nobody would be in what they are without a teacher. Just, you know, hey, it's better than the old saying's better than a sharp stick in the eye, I guess.
I just want to make a comment that is concerning to me. By no means do I think that any of this is a detriment moving forward, and especially to keep our teachers and to make sure that this district takes care of our staff. But I'm concerned about working from a deficit. I'm concerned about even, gosh, I don't even know where to start. The deficit is really redlined in my mind. How can we help these people that teach our kids, that work for us? How can we help them with the economy being what it is? Gosh, we understand that. But we have a budget that is redlined. We're operating from a deficit. How do we do that? I mean,
How do we sustain it?
how do we keep it? How do we give from not having to give from? That's a concern to me. I'm not sure that, you know, I don't know how that's operable. I don't know how we can sustain it. How can we move from that? It's just the deficit. To me, it's just blaring deficit, operating in a deficit, which I understand it's gonna get better. I understand that. We're gonna move forward. We're gonna get to where we're not operating in a deficit. But right now, today, we're reaching into empty pockets. How do we do that? What's the solution here to compensate our staff, to compensate for what they do, to take care of them? How do we do that from an empty pocket? That's just my comment. I'm really concerned about operating from an empty pocket, to be able to say, people, we appreciate what you do. We understand the importance that you are to our kids, to our district, to our kids, to our community, but our pockets are empty. So I know we're going to get better. I know we are. That's just my comment.
Yeah, I 100% completely agree with you. So it is extremely hard to think about giving raises when we are in a deficit. At the same time, the infrastructure doesn't exist, so I would like to put some infrastructure in place. But like with the stipends, documenting what we have today so we can build off of it, not doing a raise with that new infrastructure. And then secondly, if more money does come from the legislature during this special session that they're about to have, and if public schools do get funding at that time, it's definitely an item that can be revisited and added to. And then third comment is, I think it's next year, not this school year, but next school year is when our teachers are actually eligible to start receiving from the teacher incentive allotment.
Following year.
Oh, it's 25?
25 to 26? Okay. And that's double-digit type incentives. And it's a shame that we had so much leadership change that we weren't able to implement that sooner, because it would have really saved us in a moment like this.
Any other comments? I mean, the board at any time can revisit giving raises. You can do that at any time.
Oh, I did have one more comment. Yeah, I don't know how the vote is gonna go. I know what I'm gonna do. But if it doesn't go forward, if we do have individuals that are extremely underpaid or off the pay scale that we found out because now we finally did our research, can we make note of what that list is or highlights or, yeah?
Those that are under the range,
Not under the range, like,
under the lowest paid.
but yeah, like I'm like 20%, we're 20% off or something just outrageous. I'd be interested in that data.
I will only say this, that absent any kind of a raise, we're still going to have a deficit budget. Not moving forward with investing in our teachers is going to be more of a cost than what the dollar figure represents.
And that's built into the budget anyway, right?
Correct.
So, there.
What do you mean it's
What's
built in?
built into the budget?
What do you mean, built into the budget?
This compensation plan is built.
I just asked that a minute ago.
I just said you hadn't
We have
approved it
not
yet.
approved it.
You
Oh,
said.
yeah, okay.
You said that. I presented it, but you haven't approved it yet.
Okay, but it's
Yeah.
built into the
It's built
budget.
into that. those
But
figures.
we would go from a 2.7
2,
to
3.
1.9-ish, 1.9 to 2.
So if.
Well, it wouldn't reduce the whole $327,000 in the benefit. I still need the health insurance and I still need some TRS from correction from last year.
So again,
And it might not be the whole, it could be, it would be over $500,000. Yeah.
when items like this are brought to the board that are incentivizing for the district, it's extremely important that you can tell me a straight dollar amount with this is this much, with any item that's brought as an incentive.
As an incentive?
What
do you mean by that?
Any, not as, like we shouldn't have, it's not the 473,000, but it's not the 800,000. It's a little bit in between. We believe, like, I need to know the exact number. Like that is,
Because there are differences in there. I think the number's not bigger because of the turnover that we've had. People that were making this much left, people that are coming in are making more or less than what those people do. So there's a lot of changes in there. They're not just because we're giving a raise, it's because of we have different people and they're making different, even if we had the exact same staff.
A 20-year employee versus a 1 year.
And so there's always that turnover with the teachers, and that's really easy to tell you. But we also have a lot of changes, like every year the schools, like for instance, last year the middle school had a certified teacher doing ISS. So now they have a para doing it. So you could look at that one little area and say, well, we saved half of an FTE, or whatever the difference is between what the certified teacher was making and what the para is making. We saved that money. But that's just that one little piece. When you look at the whole school, and then when you look at the whole district, all those little numbers, they each mean something, but they're all something that's a little bit different. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you say the raises cost X amount of dollars, I see what you're saying.
You can say as a snapshot in time with the employees we have today, this is how much this action item costs the district. And you can make those just clarifications. Yeah.
This was a tough one, man, I understand, everybody needs more money and stuff, but we, as a board, have to be good stewards of our financials to our community. We have to answer to the community. Also, we have to answer to our teachers. It's tough. It's a tough call. That's all I got to say.
We do have the best at TM. I said we do have the best at TM. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
I would just say that if there was an opportunity to make this better, we should have put it out here today. So to me, this is the best negative that we could have. That's my concern. Right? Wouldn't you think? So there's a downside to that. That's my concern, because the last few months, and we've talked about it, it's been very fluid. And we didn't know that we were going to be at a negative 2.2 million until a few days ago. So that's my only concern. I'm not blaming anybody, because I know numbers change. I know this 88 number is a real monster for you. And, that's, if anything that COVID taught us is that we can't prepare for things we don't know that are going to happen. And so I guess that's the caveat that we're, kind of, at least from my perspective.
All right.
Madam President, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the 2023-2024 compensation plan as presented.
I'll make that motion to approve the compensation person as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, does someone want to make another motion? Does someone want to table it?
Doesn't it die for lack of a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to number 5. Discuss and consider the adoption of legally required budgets, general fund, debt service, and food service by major revenue and function category for 2023-2024.
So, Madam President, members of the board, as a result of that action, the budget that you're going to approve tonight does contain the salary compensation plan. However, based on your actions tonight, we will bring it back for amendments to be amended as presented.
Do we need to make a motion during that recommendation? Or
I'm
To
not
be
sure
amended?
exactly how the procedure is, but put some caveat on the motion that says we are adopting the budget as presented this evening, but we are not approving the compensation plan. An amendment will be brought forward at the next regular board meeting to adjust the budget without those changes.
Any further elaboration?
No, I mean, this budget represents what I went over in the public hearing. And it does include everything we talked about in the compensation plan.
So, Madam President, I move to, oh, that's yours.
Yeah. I move to adopt the proposed Tolosa Midway ISD 2023-2024 legally adopted budget by major revenue and expenditure function category for the general fund, debt service fund, and food service fund as presented in the designated attachment with the amendment to be brought to the next meeting. Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
I have a motion made by Leo and a second by Ben. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0.
I should have abstained.
Agenda item number 6, adopt a resolution to levy tax rate for 2023 to 2024.
Everyone has discussed in the public hearing, based upon what the state tells us we have to do, based upon total values of the state going up and compression and all other factors, you have the resolution to adopt our tax rate for next year. Based upon those rules, 0.7575 for M&O and 0.1677 for INS.
You have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Yeah.
I'll second that. I have a motion by Leo, and I made the second, that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.9252, which is effectively a 33.6% increase in the tax rate. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to agenda item number 7, discuss and consider approval of deficits resolution.
That's me again. That is defeasance. And I don't even know if it's spelled right, because I look at it, it doesn't even look like a real word.
The resolution actually needs to be read for the tax rate.
Yes,
That's
we
correct,
read
that's
that.
correct. And it's a lot shorter than it used to be.
Be it resolved, ordained, and ordered by the Board of Trustees of the Tolosa Midway Independent School District on August 31st, 2023, that we hereby levy or set the tax rate on $100 valuation for the district for the tax year 2023 at a total tax rate of $0.9252 to be assessed and collected by the duly specified assessor and collector as follows: 0.7575 for the purpose of maintenance and operations, and $0.1677 for the purpose of payment of principal and interest on debts. Such taxes are to be assessed and collected by the tax officials designated by the district. This tax rate will raise more taxes for maintenance and operation than last year's tax rate. The tax rate will effectively be raised by 33.6% and will raise taxes for maintenance and operations on a $100,000 home by approximately $230.80. Adopted this 31st day of August 2023 by the Board of Trustees. Now moving on to agenda item number 7.
You said 230. I don't know if that makes a difference. It's 232, maybe.
I have 23280. Correction. Thank you, Leah. Now moving on to agenda item number 7.
This evening, we're asking, because of what we're doing with our INS rate, we have our regular scheduled debt payments, but in a way to keep our rate the same, we can also defease or pay off early some of our debt. At this time last year, we asked y'all to do this resolution to defease about $225,000, and we just made that payment this week. So for another year, we're asking to approve this resolution, and this would be, we're asking for the amounts that are in there to approve it, and then as the year goes by, we will evaluate, and then at this time next August, we will look at where we stand, and we'll work with Victor and figure out exactly what the amount that we can defease up to the limits that you approved this evening. But we have to do it now before the year starts, to give us the authority to do that at the end of next year. Any other questions for, this is what we're doing to maintain our INS rate and pay off some of our debt.
Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion made by Paul. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip.
We have a resolution for that also, right?
Yes. I maybe we just have to read that.
A resolution by the Board of Trustees of the Tolosa Midway Independent School District providing for the deficits and calling for redemption certain currently outstanding district obligations, directing the board secretary or a designee thereof to effectuate the redemption of these obligations, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement, delegating to certain district officials and staff the authority to effectuate the matters herein resolved and other matters in connection therewith. Passed and approved the 31st day of August 2023. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, discuss and consider approval of RFP 23-005 Marketing and Communication Services.
Ms. Reed?
The district on August 10th issued a request for proposals for marketing and communication services to assist with our November bond 2023. We published in the paper on August 10th and 17th as required by our procurement law. Proposals were due on August 22nd at 3 p.m. At the end of the deadline, we did receive 4 proposals. We received proposals from CISO Communications Advantage Strategy Group, Datum Tech, and Rhodes Branding. A committee of 4 members reviewed each proposal on 8 criteria that was listed in the RFP. After review, 2 of the vendors actually mentioned bond elections and the services that we're looking for to make our bond 2023 successful. But one really stood out as that's what they specialized in, and that was Advantage Strategy Group. They really stood, out amongst the competition. And so for that reason, we're recommending that we award them the contract to Advantage Strategy Group in the amount of $82,500. Does anyone have any questions?
From what funds is this contract going to be paid from?
It's not a budgeted item.
Also, reading here, I was just curious, it says that the the scoring committee reviewed the proposals based on the following. It says the vendor's past relationship with the district. I've never heard of them with anything to do with the district. What have they done for us?
None of
before?
them did, so none of them scored any points for that.
Okay. I wrote somewhere else, the amounts that were due. So it's signing, which would be as of when?
After board approval.
Okay, so say that it's tonight. So they get 41,250, correct?
Correct.
All right, so tomorrow they get 20,625, correct?
Yes, but I believe we're gonna speak to them about the terms of that because we are signing it. I think they sent this to us a week or two ago, and so we are gonna be talking to them about their payment schedule.
So on October the 1st, then they're going to get an additional 20,625. So are they going to get paid in full before our bond goes out for vote? Am I understanding this correctly? Is my math right?
What it looks like.
Yeah, 'cause it's November that they.
So they're going to get paid before we actually take the bond out?
A month
For-
before.
Yeah, we could.
But services will have been rendered because they're already starting the process of creating our logos. They're gonna be doing the video, they're gonna be doing the social marketing, working with Chrissy and with the team. So their services will have already been rendered prior to election day.
Their fee structure is consistent with what they did with Gregory Portland.
Is this the lady that we spoke to
Yes,
via
sir.
Zoom?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask who's the committee? Who does that from the
Three
district?
of us, well, actually, everybody's in the room. No,
No.
Dr. Sham.
But they'll still be working through the whole month of October to
Yes,
continue
I would assume until
marketing and
election day.
educating.
Okay, so it is through right up to?
Yes.
Okay, so,
It's just the bulk of their work is up front.
okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Is that also included already in the
No.
budget?
It's not
No,
budgeted.
it's a non-budget, so that comes out of the general fund then? Does that come out of the general fund?
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have a recommendation?
Madam President, the administration recommends the Board of Trustees award RFP 23-005 for marketing and communication strategies to Advantage Strategy Group.
We have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion from Leo and a second from Janie for the Board of Trustees to award the RFP number 23-005 for marketing and communication services to Advantage Strategy Group. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Agenda item number 9, discuss and consider approval of the T-Test appraisal list.
Dr. White?
Madam President, members of the board, this is just bringing forward the yearly eligible appraisal list for the district. This is a standard operating procedure pursuant to DNA Legal. And so the list is here before you. Everybody is currently certified through the 23-24 school year and is eligible to appraise teachers within the district. As of right now, campus appraisers are the only assigned appraisers for the teachers in the district. However, you will find district members such as myself on the list in the event that someone like myself is needed to appraise, just as a backup, just as a precaution, nothing else.
If it's requested, right?
Yes, sir. Or if it's requested, in the event that would happen. Any questions?
I have a question, and I don't really know if it's really appropriate for me to ask, but I see on the list Mr. Reese as an appraiser. Who would he appraise? He was special ed, and so,
Right, it would probably be if we had a situation where we needed to bring in a third party because there was a dispute or a complaint about the actual observation that was given by the primary appraiser, he could potentially fill in the event that that was needed, especially if we did have something coming from the special education department.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a recommendation.
The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the T-test appraisers for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I'll make the motion that recommend the Board of Trustees approve the T-test appraisers for 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I'll second that. So we have a motion made by Paul Mastella and second by Kim. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Agenda item number 10, discuss and consider approval of TM VIP pass for TM athletic events.
Madam President, members of the board, I recommend that we offer these to our district residents 65 and over for free admission into regular athletic events.
Any
I think it's a
questions?
good idea.
I think it's awesome.
I was just wondering, because the card, the little sample you had just was athletic events, and then the board book, it said free admission for campus theater productions also.
In exploring that, there's an issue with, they do online ticketing. We're going to make it so this will cover theater events as well. There's just some logistical events that we've got to work through.
Yeah, I can understand that, yes. Just a question I'd ask.
How will they be identified?
Will they go that?
They'll go to, if you approve this, we'll put out guidelines on how they can redeem them, where they can redeem them, and what the qualifications are.
I feel like a lot of people would not know about it. So that you would take advantage, but not everyone who's applicable.
They can probably send out a message to,
we can
on
probably put
the
it on our
square, the
website.
parent square, or put it on the website to get information out. Just,
I also think it's a great incentive as we're block walking for the bond. I am block walking for the bond.
But no, that's why it was in there. It's a good incentive.
all right. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
It is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the TM VIP Pass Gold Card for athletic events to district residents ages 65 and older.
I'll make that motion that the board approve the TM VIP Pass Gold Card for athletic events to district residents age 65 and older.
And I'll second that.
I'll second it. May as well. Keep my string going.
All right, I have a motion by Paul and a second by Leo. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. Do we have any further business? We have a meeting September 18th, 2023. That's a regular called board meeting.
You have a workshop on the 7th, I believe.
That's that one for the,
A
Legislative.
legislative update
one that would have been.
from 6 to 8, right? 6 to 8 p.m.? Okay,
And that's required, correct?
that is a required credit.
That was a requirement, yes.
I will be out of the district next week.
Okay.
So,
You have your updated
Yeah.
sheet, so it tells you
As
who
the
you need it.
longest board member, you get 0.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Do I have a second? Oh, we're still let Leo second everything.
Oh, you can do it.
No, you can keep your string going.
Okay, all those in favor? I thought you were gonna oppose.
I was,
Opposed,
but
motion
I
carries
decided not to.
6-0. It is 10:39 on August 31st, 2023. This meeting is adjourned.
I was betting 4 hours.